All right, guys, I need you to fill in these notes. We're going to do the next part of our unit, which is solving by difference of squares and square roots. This is just a shortcut that you can use just to be a little bit more efficient with getting through your problems faster instead of relying only on your calculator. So on this left column, this first column is showing the difference of squares. Okay, so notice, and let me get my pen here. Notice that they have two, a square means it's an exponent of 2. And the key to this is the difference of squares. For it to be a difference, you have to see subtraction. So to do this shortcut, I'm just going to add a little note. Must see subtraction. Okay. And that subtraction needs to be between the two terms. And the other thing is, I don't know if you can see that, subtraction. For it to be the difference of squares, we're only going to have two terms, or two, I'm not going to say two numbers. One is going to be a variable, one might be a number or a combination, but there's only two, and we have to see subtraction. And then if this happens, then I can go straight to, basically we end up taking the square root of each term, and I'll talk about what that means. And we get, notice that instead of the exponent of 2, that's what taking the square root is getting rid of the exponent, we now have a plus b in parentheses and a minus b. So if I go from subtraction of two terms, then I'm going to go into the factor form. So the two parentheses here, that's called our factor form. Okay, and that's what we're going to use to solve. So the first thing we need to do anytime I see the difference of squares is we have to set each factor equal to 0. Okay, so here's a quick example. We have x squared minus 25. I know, let me get my, I know the square root of 25. The square root of any variable to the power of 2 is just going to be that variable. The square root of 25 is 5. And if for some reason you forgot that, you could always check to see if it's a perfect square by doing second and then x squared, and then put the number underneath that square root. Is called the radical symbol. And hit enter. And if it comes out to be a whole number, then it's a perfect square. If you get a decimal, then you can't use this shortcut at all. Okay, so we know the difference of squares here comes out to these two factors, x plus 5 and x minus 5. So when we set each one equal to 0, what that means is you're going to basically separate these into two possible solutions. The first one, I probably should do my arrow. We're going to set this one equal to 0, so that'll be x plus 5 equal to 0, and then we're going to also set the other one, x minus 5 equal to 0. And then once we set it equal to 0, then we're just solving, okay, like a regular one-step equation. So here we just subtract 5, here we'd add 5. We would do the same thing here. 4x squared minus 49, if I set, I'm just going to write it underneath, 2x plus 7 equal to 0. And then I can set this one over here, 2x minus 7 equal to 0. And then if I was to solve this, I would add the 7 to both sides. I get 2x equals to 7. And then I have to divide it by 2. And so x equals 7 over 2. So this, sometimes using, because this will happen, you will have a fraction answer as an answer choice. And using this shortcut might help you get to that a lot faster, or especially trying to see this on the calculator, understanding what fraction that is. So we're just going to go through a couple of these. The first thing, if I see y equals x squared, if I see a y equals, I want to go ahead and just change that y to the 0. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to take the square root of each term. So I'm just going to take the square root. I'm going to put that answer down here. Take the square root. It works because we have a minus sign. And the square root of x squared is just x. Basically, taking the square root is getting rid of the exponent. Okay, and you just have the x. And then the square root of 9 is 3. So my factors When I bring that down, that's going to be 3. So what I'm going to have is x plus 3 and x minus 3. And this is equal to 0. Doesn't look like 0. I'll fix that. And then we're solving each factor. So this first one, I'm writing x plus 3 equals 0. And then I also have x minus 3 equals 0. And I know some of you can do this mentally. You don't have to show the step. But just to recall, we're basically isolating the x. We're solving for x, so we have to say minus 3 on this side. And this will give me x equals negative 3. And then I would say plus 3 on this side, on both sides, to isolate the variable. And this will give me x equals a positive 3. So this is indicating I have two solutions. So sometimes to show that, they use this bracket formation, like that. Instead of parentheses, they're going to show a negative 3, comma 3. Or if I know, I can do what we call, since one is positive and one is negative, I can say x equals positive, negative, saying plus minus 3. These are both ways of showing that solution. Okay, and I'm saying this because you're going to start seeing this on your assessments and on your sample star questions, so you know what that means. Okay, now on this next problem, just going down the column, excuse me, we now have a coefficient in front of the x squared. So anytime I see this number in front, I always want to put a little star here. I probably need to change my font. I want to first check for a GCF, okay? That means the greatest common factor. And the easiest way, GCF, to do it is just take whatever number you see in front and just see, is it divisible by the number, by the other term, okay? So I'm going to just rewrite it over here so we can see what I'm referring to. We got 6x squared minus 54, okay? I take the coefficient, which is the 6, and I ask myself, can 6 go into 54? Can I divide it by 54? And I can. So when I do that, I'm dividing each term by 6. So that's the GCF. If it's not 6, then what I would look for is a multiple of that number, like 2, or I could do 3, because 3 times 2 gives me 6, all right? So first, we're dividing by 6. This will cancel here, leaving us with x squared minus, and then 54 divided by 6 is going to give us our 9. And because we took out the GCF, or we divided by 6, I'm going to show you how we would write that. We would have this parentheses and the 6 outside the parentheses. Now we're still going to do, the difference of squares. This is still x squared minus 9. We're still doing difference, and I'm going to abbreviate that, of squares here. So that means I just did that problem above, the x squared minus 9. So I'm now just going to rewrite it with those are square root, with the difference of square form, the two factors. So this would be 6, then parentheses, x plus 3, and the next parentheses, x minus 3. And this is going to equal to 0. Now, I'm not worried about this coefficient of 6, okay? I can't make that equal to 0 because that's not true. I'm just worrying about the parentheses, the grouping, and I'm solving each one, which we already did. We did that above. So our answer to this one still is x equals plus or minus 3. Okay? X equals plus or minus 3. All right, let's try another one. Okay, let's look at number, excuse me, number 5. So the first thing I think I have to look at this 2. I'm asking myself, can it go into the 162? It can, because they're both even, all right? So we're going to divide both terms by 2, okay? I'm going to put that 2 that I'm dividing in front of my parentheses, okay? And now I'm just going to simplify it. So the 2's will cancel here, leaving me with just x squared. Then I have a plus sign. The 162 would cancel. Would simplify. and giving me an 81. And then I'm looking, and I don't know if y'all noticed something here, but I'm stopping because yes, I could take the square root of this x squared, and I can do the square root of 81. That's 9. But right off the bat, I see a plus sign, and that's indicating that it's not difference. It's not subtraction. So because this is not a difference of squares, I cannot do the shortcut. Okay, I cannot do plus or minus. Right? This is not going to be able to be solved. It's going to be solved, but we call not a real number solution. Okay, so I'm just going to put there for no real solution. Because if I were to make this equal to 0 and then try to solve it, you're going to get a negative x squared, a negative 81, and you can't have negatives. And you'll see, we'll go into that more into detail on solving by square roots, okay, on this next column. So that's showing a shortcut for difference of squares. So if I go back to the top here, now there's another way you can do it, and that's just by taking the square root. So some people like this faster. Some people use this because they see the subtraction and they just, okay, let me take the square root. They just do it mentally. But another way, and sometimes what you're going to be given is an equation or a quadratic without a b, okay? So we use solving by square roots when it's in this form. Ax squared plus c equals 0. Normally when we have standard form, I'm just going to recap that. We have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So the way we can take the square root is if this middle term is gone, and then we can solve it. So basically it says it right here. We use this when there's no bx term. Okay, so we don't see no middle term. And the way, these are our steps. The way we solve it is we isolate the x squared. We get that x squared term by itself. So in this example, to get this x squared term by itself, because it has a minus 49, I have to get rid of the 49 by doing the opposite. So I'm going to add 49 to both sides of the equal sign. Oops, so 94, sorry. 49, 49. And then now I get x squared equals 49. And then step 2 is take the square root to both sides. The square root is this radical symbol right here, square root. And whenever we get that, take the square root of the number and we get a whole number, that is a perfect square. Sometimes when we do this, you're going to see it here at the end, you could get a non-perfect square and you can write it as just the radical. So this ends up turning to be x equals and plus or minus 7, okay? It's just like we did in the other one, because you got to remember that a positive number will always have 2 square roots, okay? Remember, the exponent tells you how many factors you have, right? I'm just going to review something real quick. So I could do 7, 2 positive 7s, and that equals 49. But I also can do 2 negative 7s, because a negative times a negative is a positive 49. So that's why there's a plus or minus, okay, solution. That's why you're going to use this symbol, okay? So let's practice just taking the solving by square roots. All right, so on the first one, if I isolate this x squared, we're going to have to do what first? Exactly, you're going to have to minus the 7 on both sides. We're going to cancel out that 7 and get x squared equals 81. This is the one I was talking about at the end of the last row. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. If you're not too sure, you just put it in the calculator, hit second and then the x squared button that gives you the radical symbol, put the number underneath it and hit enter, okay? So that is 9. So what we're going to do here is write x equals plus minus 9. which means you have two solutions. You have one solution that's a positive 9 and one solution that's a negative 9. Okay. Okay. But as long as you get the plus or minus, and you remember, you know that means there's two solutions, one positive, one negative, then you're fine. You can stop after taking the square root. So, all right, so now let's look at this one. All right. So here we need to isolate this term. So we first still have to subtract the 3 on both sides. Excuse me. So when I rewrite this, I have this fraction coefficient 1/2 x squared equals 72. My pen stopped working. I'm gonna write that. So, hold on just a second. Okay, got it back to working, sorry. So now we have to remember how to get rid of the fraction here. Okay, so whenever you have a fraction coefficient, to eliminate that, to cancel it out, you have to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1 over 2 is flipping the number, so that would be 2 over 1. Okay, now that's going to cancel each term, or cancel the fraction, leaving us the x squared. And now I'm doing 72 times 2, which is 144. Okay, and then our last step is to take that square root on both sides. And the square root of 144 is 12. So x equals plus or minus 12. Or you can do plus and then a negative 12. Okay. Now, this last one I want to talk about because this happens at times as an answer choice, right? Where they write it in a certain form. So, like, the steps are still the same. We want to isolate the variable with the x squared, okay? So that means I have to eliminate this 8 first. So we're going to say minus 8 on both sides of the equal sign. When I do that, don't forget your sign here. So this is going to be a negative 3x squared equals a negative 30. Now to eliminate this coefficient of negative 3, exactly, you're going to divide by negative 3. And that's great because this now becomes a positive. So we got x squared equals positive 10. Now to solve it, we just take the square root on both sides, okay? So x equals, so this is what I was talking about. If I do second x squared and do the square root of 10, this is not a perfect square. This is a decimal answer. This is irrational. We'll go into that a little bit. But basically what they'll do when they show an answer choice, because this 10 cannot be round or does not come out to be a whole number, they will, let me show you real quick. They would say, oh, okay, the answer is plus or minus the square root of 10, because that radical does not simplify to a whole number. So they will write it like this, or they'll give the approximation. Okay, so they'll say, I'm gonna write it over here, and I'll do it in green, or they'll say x is approximately 3.16. Okay, because if I go back to looking at, they might show the first two digits. Oh, now it's not going to open. Okay, or they'll say there's a delay, or they say 3.1 or 3.2, excuse me, because they could round the 6 here. So hold on just a second. Let's see if I can get the calculator to work again. There it goes. So they'll either say 3.16, or just they'll look at the 1 and then to the right is a 6. So if it's 5 or higher, you're gonna rise. Okay, the number, it will soar. It gets bigger. If it's 4 or less, okay, it's going to stay the same. All right. All right, so that takes care of, let me get back to our thing right here. That takes care of our learning our different ways. You pick which one you want to use, okay? Now we're going to look at some sample questions. And I do want you to check your answers to see if you're on the right track. So I'm going to give you a minute. You can pause the video, and the question is going to pop up for you to check to see if you did it right or not. And I will explain. So I'm just going to pause myself and then give you an explanation. Okay, the answer was C here. Some people saw right off the bat this is a difference to squares because we saw that minus sign. So I saw this is going to be x plus 6, x minus 6, or you could have made this equal to 0. So I saw difference of squares. If you're not sure, you could always go to your calculator to help problem solve. So remember, f of x is the same thing as a y. So we can go to y equals. Let me just show y'all. When we do that, we graph. And we're looking, remember your zeros or your solutions are the x-intercepts. So you're looking to see when the parabola touches the x-axis. And right here I can see this is at a -6 and it's at a +6. So that is another way to check your reasoning if you're not too sure which method is right, okay? All right, so I want you to try number 2 next, okay? And I'm going to pause and I'm going to give you a minute to answer the question to check your reasoning, and then I'll go over it. All right, you should got B on this one, okay? We got to remember, if we're solving each one, remember your exponent. Your exponent tells you how many factors you have of that term or that grouping. So like if I rewrite this, this is showing 2 factors of 6x. Make each one equal to 0. Well, they're the same, so I'm just going to solve one. Well, that means x equals 0, because if I solve this divided by 6, any number divided by 0 divided by any number is just 0, okay? So if I go to B here, that means we have 2 factors, 2 groupings of x minus 6. They're both the same, so I said just this x minus 6 equals 0. Add 6 to both sides, so my answer, and that is the only answer, is 6, okay? Again, you could always use your calculator to check, meaning put each answer choice one at a time, not all of them. Do A equals into the calculator. Remember, you can, where the 0 is, you can put that as your y equals, and then check the x-intercepts, okay? All right, let's try number 3 here. Now, I'm going to let you go about it, see what approach you want to use. There are some keywords to help you with your problem solving. So I'm just gonna pause our video while this works and while you work, and let's see what you got. Let's check your answer. Okay, this answer was D. All right. There's different ways you could go about this. One, I saw this was in standard form, and these are my 2 factors, so I could use FOIL to get the factors into standard form. And so first times first, well, when I do that, that gives me 9x squared. So right off the bat, that doesn't match, so I don't need that one. So here's a shortcut, okay? I know I can look at the first term and the last term and see if, and make sure they add up. So like, if I do the FOIL of the first one, and then make sure they add up. So this will give me my my negative 6 x squared, which is what I need, okay? Then when I go to the outer, that's a positive 3x, okay? But I need a negative term here because this is going to be a positive 8x. Right there, I know this is not going to work, okay? Now, let's say you forgot to use FOIL. The key word here is right, let me highlight it this word, is where it says equivalent. So what you could do is look for the same graph. I talked about this trick earlier in a video. So if I just put the first standard form in, okay, and graph that, and like I'm gonna turn this one off first, so you know what I'm talking about. So when I graph it, Okay, my graph button. There's the given standard form equation, okay? We have no solutions here because it doesn't touch the x-axis, but we don't need that. We just need to see if it's the same. It's going to give me the same graph. So if I go to the first answer choice and turn it on and graph it, no, they didn't overlap. They're not on top of each other. So that tells me it's not an answer and not a solution. So you can use your graphing calculator to help you problem solve, okay? All right, let's go ahead and try the next one. I want you to pick a method, see if you can get to the solution. Once you start seeing certain methods or certain setup, like difference of squares or taking the square root or using your calculator, you can start seeing answers a whole lot faster. So I want you to try that one. All right, should have got F here. I just went to solving it, isolating the x squared, so I just add 16 on both sides. X squared equals 16, and then I'm just taking the square root. And the square root of 16 is a positive and negative 4. So there's no way it's going to be larger. Okay, hopefully you recognize you can eliminate those. Okay, they're just trying to trick you a little bit. All right, and let's do the last one. Read it carefully and see if you can get to the solution using the graph. All right, hopefully you got D for this one. Okay, and the key was this is between which two values of x is 0. 0 is your x-intercept. So I went in, I'm just reading from left to right. There's the first one right here. Just get the pen. This is the first one, and I can see it's between a -2 and a -1. That's not even one of our answer choices. I go over here. There's the other solution, the other 0, or x-intercept, and that is between 4 and 5. All right, guys, thanks for getting this done. You're not gonna, don't forget, hold on, let me show you. Let me get to it. Okay, what I wanted to tell you is don't forget that this worksheet is due. It's going to be a grade. There is a link for you to check your answers if you want to do the escape room. So if you didn't do this, please go back to it. Guys, you have to do your practice. It's the only way we can ensure that you really understand the skill and you're proficient enough, excuse me, when for start time. So if you didn't do that, and I guess along with homework 3, then we're gonna have things to do every night, so you can go back to that. And if you're done with that, then you can go on to the quizzes because we're gonna do starlight questions on quizzes. Um, you'll see, and you can start on that. So if you're done and you want something else to work on, go to quizzes. All right, thanks, guys.